Yeah.
I wear my shirt today.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Everybody like to stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Just a reminder to silence your cell phones and any conversations. Please take them out in the hallway. Yeah, if you want to, Bob might as well read it. There's like
Do you want me to
five,
read?
so.
I read it. Or Bob read it.
Matthew Bergeron, $37.40. Charles Fitzgerald is $1,203.38. Sophie Frizzell is $45.41. Carrie Mason is $338.68, and Jonathan Morgan is $738.80.
For total?
For a total of $2,363.67. Ready?
Yep.
John's like, do I, don't I, Russ, me? Tell me when you're ready.
Ready.
Andy Angelowicz, 821.15. Jennifer Jones, 738.80. Russ Kelly is 738.80. Bob Gary, 738.80. Suzanne Benoit is 623.36. Jason Gagnon is 110.82. Andrew Gray, 72.7. Got it?
1080.
One.
And here we go.
Andrew, 677.
Yep.
Kaiser, 397.4. Thomas is 193. Katie Coppola is 136. Shayla Gherkin is 30.18. Mary Lyons Hall is 264.87. Janice Weirs is 838.28. Kiki Downs Wall is 729.65. Marley Beltry is $50.79. Joyce Kegel is $562.49. Jillian Benedict is $635.64. Karen Clement is $1,326.18. Heather Haggett is $359.37. Tamara Peak is $797.98. Daphne Watts is $843.96. Katie Blazik Ahern is $720.31. Jeffrey Collins is $824.70. Wayne Robinson is $1,056.84. Joseph Burrs $1,110.43. John Bryant is $2,347.32. Alyssa Sanuski is $307.52. Alexander Hall is $291.20. Julie Labonte is $819.78. Timothy Labonte is $120.71. Barry Levine is $254.89. Nathan Richards is $1,883.48. Katrina Tennant is $795.20. Jack Tremblay is $1,309.88. Trevor Whitby is $2,187.38. Gabrielle Labonte is $58.18. Eli Corson is $777.40. Edward Decatur is $575.41. Jason Grant is $583.05. John Isabel is $460.70. Erica Kenyon is $544.50. William Kenyon is $427.89. Peter King is $39.24. Connor McCullum is $44.32. Benjamin Roach is $576.26. Julia Tennant is $83.11. Kendra Brackett is $634.69. Justin Doty is $899.02. Robert Gagnon is $360.67. Matthew Kelly is $2,481.50. Kevin Nealon is $1,094.63. Robert McCon is $217.54. James Saltzman is $2,040.09. Christopher Spitaleri is $2,414.45. Josh Turner is $0.28. John Ventura is $1,499.50. Jeremy Worcester is $475.94. Jared Wright Ward is $2,863.57.
Total direct deposit, $45,861.45.
Combined total of $48,225.12. 17 hours of overtime in the PD, 16 at the fire department, and a half hour at the highway department.
How much of us
Okay, sweet, thanks.
They're up. Alright, Amazon Capital Services, $654.89. CJBB Trucking, $2,908.75. Boundtree Medical, $2,407.19. Comcast, $91.90. Denson Construction, $5,000. Donovan Equipment, $32. Justin Doty, $1,590.
This sec, sorry. Oh, yeah. And Doty, 1590.
$1,590.
Yep.
East Coast Emergency Outfitter, $327. D&J Auto Parts, $269.20. Fire Penny Firefighter Equipment, $198.77. Teresa Frank, $70. Kimball Midwest, $225.05. LCB Transport, $255. McFarland Ford Sales, $1,474.86. Nathan Richard, $92.90. New Hampshire City and Town Clerk Association, $20. NHCPR, $1198.86. NHLEAP, $125. DOT, $2,417.35. Trustees of Trust Fund, $400. Uline, $367.08. UniFirst, $63.40. United Construction Forestry, $98.90. WB Mason, $422.20.
Total accounts payable, $20,710.30.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Got everything?
All set?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
On Saturday.
See you later.
I will.
Take a motion on consent agenda.
Motion.
Second?
Motion and second. Consent agenda consists of the public minutes from 11:29, non-public minutes from 11:29, recreation manifest, treasurer's report, and building permits. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Documents?
I have a pole license requested by Eversource Energy to erect one new pole on the corner of South Road and Tanya Lane.
For the new neighborhood there.
Do you have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
It's like probably only three of us at this time.
I think it goes on the other side too, right?
Oh, is
Yeah,
it? Is it flip?
goes both sides.
Have the 2022 equalization certificate to submit to DRA. Jim Michaud has reviewed it, and the median ratio is 72.47. So our assessments are 72.47% of market value.
Everybody understand that?
I think so.
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
This is our annual state license for the special permit application for Dragon Mosquito. It's their pesticide application for this, mosquito treatments.
Is that always an annual contract we have with them?
And this is their license to apply in Brentwood, to apply pesticide.
Specifically, gotcha.
Motion.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And it looks like this is just my signature.
Is this the one? This is a highway safety grant with New Hampshire Department of Safety for the police department to do speed and, drunk driving.
Motion.
Hold on, we need to. Chief, do you know what the grant match is? So I think that has to be part of the minutes.
8,200?
8,200 should be rather than
Do you know what the town match is though? Or is there no town match?
equal times.
Pure grant.
Move to accept 8,200 from highway safety.
Motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Did we apply for this, or is it automatic to all towns?
They sent out invitations to apply this year, I'm not sure if,
Probably most towns did, I would imagine.
I need three of you to sign that front page and then you need to sign this too.
what? There is initial one too, or is that just those two? Yeah, there is a match. So we need to amend the motion, because there is a match of $2,050.
Motion to amend.
Second?
Yep, second. Where is that coming out of? Just.
I would assume that department overtime line, but comes out of the police department budget somewhere.
Okay.
So in order to get that money, we have to match it with our own.
Yes.
Gotcha.
That's just one.
Do you have any stickers?
You got them? On the first page.
So there's one spot on the front page, and then we're in, there's some initials.
Do we need to do the other?
The other
blue
two
ones
blue
too?
is not needed, just the front page, and there's like 4 pages I have to sign here.
Okay.
Andy, what was the match?
2,050, I think, and change.
25%. So we keep going here, whatever.
Well, it's the last signature, so.
Jen's actually gonna sign.
Was there another one?
Yeah, there's 4 pages.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
The last
Yep.
3, and then Karen. You good?
Okay.
Planning board's requesting cash bond for D&H Realty to be released for $65,088 for 388 Route 125. The request is due to recommendations made by TEC, town engineer, due to completion of many items on the project, and it will leave a balance of $2,500.
How much was being released?
$65,088.
And they're fine with that?
Planning and the town engineer.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to release $65,088 from D&H Realty Bond for 388 Route 125. Only one signature needed, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Planning board has a second request to release 102,000, reducing a letter of credit by 58,800, leaving a balance of $102,602.50 for Brentwood ROH LLC.
Do you know where that is?
That one is Tanya Lane.
So Tanya Lane, they're asking to reduce the bond by 58,800, which will leave 102,602.50 in the bond.
Motion.
Motion and second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
At the November 17th Planning Board meeting, they voted to recommend Doug Finnan and Stephanie Kizza to serve as commissioners on the Rockingham Planning Commission for a term of 4 years. So these are letters of appointment from the Select Board to RPC to seat those two individuals.
So I need a motion to appoint Stephanie and Doug to the RPC.
Motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I just say publicly that both Doug and Stephanie have really shown like a consistent and demonstrated commitment to the town, and Brentwood's better off for it.
Motion carries. I think we got new TV back pens.
And last document, Robert Colby, 306 Route 125. This is a PA 42, which is for him to receive the residential land rate for land owned on 125 in a commercial zone.
Motion.
Everybody understand that?
So it's a residential lot?
Yes,
Yes.
no commercial use.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. The board start on a meeting in between Christmas and New Year's. Do we want to take that Tuesday off and just sign a manifest, or do you want to notice a meeting?
It'd be easier for me to manifest because I have to work for holiday coverage that day.
I'm fine either way. I'm around. What are your thoughts? Manifest or?
But I could probably get here. Just change my schedule.
If it's helpful to have a meeting, I don't mind, but
Yeah.
if there's,
We'll plan it by year next week if
Wait till we get closer,
There's stuff in
there's
that stuff.
holdover.
budget or anything, or our budget should be done by then.
Real signature. Dick, you wanna come on down? Did you want
Daphne
Daphne?
too? She's in the hallway.
She disappeared.
Well, she's been standing there,
Come
like,
on in.
wait. Just waiting to say, hey.
So many inappropriate things I could have said with that.
For those of you that I don't know, I am Brentwood's longtime town moderator and supervisor of elections. I spoke to many of you 2 weeks ago, and Karen suggested that I speak again for those of you that were not here 2 weeks ago, and also to give you an update. And what I'm talking about is what you've read in the Exeter newsletter for the last 2 weeks, seen in social media, and seen in the Brentwood newsletter. And that's the missing 27 absentee ballots. At the end of the November election, when everything was totaled, there was a difference of 16 votes between what Eric had, Eric Turner, who won, and Melissa Litchfield, who did not win. Melissa felt, and rightly so, that there should be a recount. And since this was a state representative position, we did not handle the recount the way we did in September when we had a recount. We handled it locally because it was town and school. But this was a state mandated recount. So the state of New Hampshire received all of our materials that had been collected through the day. And in the process of their examining them, they found 27 absentee ballots still in the envelopes. That was the big mystery. You know, how on earth did those arrive still in their envelopes and not get counted? So we're talking about 27 of the 328 absentee ballots. So let me take you on a quick line of how absentee ballots are handled. Daphne, at the beginning, before the meeting starts, Daphne posts on the wall how we will deal with absentee ballots. When I open the meeting at 7 o'clock, I announce the number of absentee ballots, and I let people know what time that they'll be dealt with. We can't deal with them until 2 hours after the opening, and this time I purposely stalled it until later in the day because I knew that there would be someone present from the Attorney General's office checking out everything that was happening, as is the case all over the state. So the ballots, so I announced that. After the 2 hours were up, Daphne took the 2 boxes of ballots, 328 of them, up to the front where the ballot clerks were, and all of them were recorded into our system. Of course, that included the 27 that were missing later on, because she had the names at that particular time. Eventually, it was time for me and others to start dealing with the absentee ballots to get them ready so that I could put them in the machine. One of the things that we have learned is that the community center is too small for elections. And our thought is that elections in the future should be at Swayze School. Too small because to deal with the absentee ballots, I was at a small table back in the corner with a second person working with me and 2 observers. And we were scrunched in over in the corner, and the ballots were piling up on the table. Okay? Twice during that time, I was called away on what I would consider to be a semi-emergency. One was to help a voter with early onset Alzheimer's, and for the last 10 years, monthly, I've been the leader of a support group for early onset, for caregivers, the leader of the caregiver support group for Alzheimer's with an agency in Portsmouth. The other time was a husband and wife couple with a 19-year-old son in a wheelchair who had all his faculties but couldn't talk. I think, now I'll preface this by saying that as moderator, as supervisor of elections, the buck stops with me. I'm the one ultimately responsible, so I take that. I think that what may have happened is that when I returned from one of those 2 times away, I picked up in the crowded table a handful of what I thought were empty envelopes, 27 of them, and put them into the empty envelopes box. Now, I don't know that. I had no mindful recollection of it but I can't think of any other thing that might have happened. So that sort of thing happened. So the next step is that there was a meeting held a week ago Monday, in the Archives building in Concord, of the New Hampshire State Election Ballot Commission. And they were going to be dealing with this mystery of the 27 ballots. Daphne and I went to it. I thought at one point that I was going to get a registered letter telling me to be there. That didn't happen. I was not asked by anybody to be there. But Daphne and I wanted to be there to see how this played out. There were 7 appeals that were being processed. The first one took about 15 or 20 minutes. The second one took an hour. We were listed as the last of the 7. And I said to Daphne, I think we're going to be here tomorrow. Suddenly, the next 4 had been yeah, the next 4 decided not to do it. They didn't do their appeal. So it was our turn. And I had no warning ahead of time, but the chair of the commission asked for the town moderator of Brentwood to stand up and explain what had happened. So I explained what I just explained to you now. There are a picture of this now in the Archives building. It's a huge room. There's a long table with 5 commissioners sitting behind it. Off on the side is the Secretary of State with his 2 associates. The room is filled with people there for the appeals and the press. Always the press. Adam from WMUR. When I finished, three of the, and I took responsibility because, you know, there's nobody else that I'm aware of. When I finished, 3 of the 5 commissioners applauded myself and Brentwood for honesty, for the way Brentwood conducts its elections, et cetera, et cetera. I then made a plea that the 27 ballots be opened so that we could determine whether Eric or Melissa was the winner. And there was a lot of baloney going on at that particular moment, trying to figure out who had the authority to go ahead and say, yes, it's okay to open them. The Secretary of State, Scanlon, had asked that they be opened. So they finally reached the point where they said, yes, they can be opened. So they went through the whole process of opening them. And of the 27 ballots, 17 were for Eric, and 10 were for Melissa. I think that at that point, I don't remember it, but I think at that point that somebody declared Eric again the winner, as he had already been. And we were pretty well closed down. Immediately, the chair of the commission came down into the audience and came up to me, shook my hand, thanked me for the presentation that I'd made, and made the comment that there isn't any one of us in the room who is not immune to an accident once in a while, and if that was the case, that was it. Daphne and I celebrated with a cheeseburger. That's the end of my story. I'm glad to respond to any comments or questions that you might like to have, and I certainly would like not to see another half-page article with myself featured next week in the Exeter newsletter. Yes?
I'm just curious, Dick, who was at the table where you left?
Jim Lucia.
When I left, there were 3 people. There was
For those emergencies?
yeah, there was Liz. Thank you. Who was sitting opposite me. We were both opening. She was a ballot clerk that Daphne had asked to sit there to help open them up. And there was Becky Dunham, who was an observer. And there was another woman who was an observer, I think from the other party, whose name I did not get. That was who, in that cramped little corner. Yes, Becky.
For the Historical Society, I don't have a copy of that article from the newsletter. I would love the Portsmouth Herald or the Seacoast Online, I would love it for the record if you still have it at home.
Okay,
That would be great, thanks, Greg.
okay. Yes,
You mentioned that the rec center is too small for elections and
Yes.
you prefer to do it in Swayze. I thought the issue was a lot of times that like school schedules and elections conflict, so is there any effort to?
I think the school is closed on election day.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you
So
know,
one
some years we have up to 5 elections, so
Right,
that's
that's what I mean,
a
yeah,
consideration.
yeah.
I'm gonna conclude with a quick little sidebar.
Mr. Moderator, 1 minute, please.
Yes.
Just for the record, when you talk, name and street name,
Oh, Jessica Scarborough,
What's
your
your
last
last
name.
Lucas,
Thank you,
I
Tim.
can spell that if needed.
Looking across the archives room, I saw Adam, who is the longtime reporter for WMUR Channel 9. And I went over and spoke to him. And I said, I want to tell you a story that you'll remember. There was an honor plane that went from Boston to Washington, a number of years ago. And I said, and it was filled with veterans of World War II. And each veteran had somebody helping them. And I said, you helped my cousin Phil. And the two of you were together for that whole day in Washington for all of the honor ceremonies. And both of you had a wonderful time. Anyway, that's my story.
Are there any more questions for Mr. Chamberlain? All right. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Daphne, did you have anything to add? Are you good? Okay. Budgets. Police and animal control. Do you want to do animal control first, because that's less painful?
There's nothing painful about this, sir. But yes, please.
Animal control is a reduction of $5,999, leaving $1 in, oh no, maybe zero?
No, I put $1.
$1 in each line item, so
It's got 9.
it's a $9 budget.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second for $9. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? $9 carries. Nice. Floor is yours, chief.
Okay, so let's look at the overall budget. Let me just pull up my copy here. I have a paper copy. Does everybody have a copy of the paper?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll deal with the salaries first, since it's generally the one that would garner the most questions. So the salary line, as you see, well, the overall budget increase is 9.09%. We'll start with that. And which equates to $92,000 on a budget of, a previous budget of just over $1 million. So part of that increase has already been approved by this board in terms of those funds for the COLA as well as the merit increases. The board previously approved a 5% COLA for each employee, as well as up to a 2.5% merit increase. In doing the scoring on all the reviews that I did, my employees all scored in the average of 2%. So all the employees in PD got a 2% merit increase, not the maximum 2.5%. So basically the overall equivalent of that approved, pre-approved, if you will, was about $24,000 if you guys had looked at the spreadsheets that came with your electronic copies. So if you kind of backed that out of what that 92,000 is, because that first year of that raise for the COLA and the merit is gonna come out of ARPA funds, so there's no tax impact for '23 on that. So if you back that out a little bit, that brings you down a little bit less than 70,000. And then if you looked at that salary, which, by the way, thank you for that merit increase in the COLA on behalf of the department. However, I went a little bit further with that in terms of, this is part of my plan of building a department and retention. You remember I've talked about retention since day one here, and the best recruitment tool is to retain. So given that, I looked at area departments. I have a full wage study if anybody would like to take a look at it for PDs, but I didn't feel it was appropriate to share it with you because it didn't have a statistical analysis of all the wages, it just reported them. And so when you got averages, some of those departments that reported having a one-year officer, there might have been 2 departments that had a 1 year. So the averages was just of 2 people versus there might have been 20 lieutenants across the board. So, but in looking at some of those things and what those other departments offer, I wanted to be a little bit above the curve. So I looked at what our folks had in terms of qualifications. And I'll start with education. I value the education, whether it's in criminal justice or it's not. If you have a bachelor's degree, it shows that you have commitment, you have drive, and that you've achieved something. And I actually, this department benefits from your bachelor's degree or your associate's degree, and we should reward that. So if you look in that spreadsheet, I put in there that there's a wage adjustment for a bachelor's and an associate's. We have 2 folks on the department, without naming names, that had qualified for that particular benefit. The other thing that I looked at was special assignments. Part of my retention model is to give all of the folks downstairs buy into the department. And when I say buy into the department, they're not just patrol. We have a lot of other functions in police work that need attention. Now, the sergeant and I could do all those functions, meaning evidence, cruiser maintenance, uniform purchase, equipment purchase, but we've decided that it's more important to spread those duties out to the employees that are over and above what their normal patrol duties are. And we call those special assignments. And again, that might be evidence room, that might be canine, that might be maintenance. So I think we had 3 folks that would qualify under the special assignment rule that I came up with. And the last that's more important, I think, we have a 3-year contract for new employees here. So right there, we're just trying to keep them for 3 years. Okay, that's great, and that's a good start. But what I'm trying to do is keep them longer than that. I don't think I need to tell you folks that the competitive market for police officers that are certified is cutthroat in any section of the state you go through. And in Rockingham County, where we have 34 communities, it's even worse. We're competing with towns that are offering sign-on bonuses of $21,000. And if you put that into perspective, let's just say you had an average contract for an employee, a 3-year employee, and it was an $18,000 contract, $6,000 a year. That employee could go to the academy and get certified on Brentwood's dollar, walk out of the academy and quit, and go to that PD and get a $21,000 sign-on bonus. Give Brentwood $18,000 of their contract, and what have we gained? Nothing. Nothing at all. So I'm trying to create things that will entice folks to come here and stay here beyond 3 years. So what I'm trying to do is entice them to a monetary raise per hour after the 3rd year to stay to the 4th, and the 4th to the 5th. So now instead of retention for up to 3 years, we're looking out towards 5, 6, and even 7 years. Because generally around the 3rd year is when people start looking anyway. Where's the grass greener? What kind of an opportunity do I have elsewhere? I'm trying to keep them from looking around after year 3. Because in actuality, when you have a 3-year contract, usually takes about 6 months to get onto a PD. They start looking at year 2.5, okay? And you can't put a monetary value on the detriment to morale when you lose people every 2 or 3 years, because you just continue that training round. And I think we've had some of that here in the past. The folks I have here are committed here, and they want to stay here, but I've got to give them something to keep them here. And it's not all about pay. We're trying to create conditions downstairs with all the blessings that you folks have given me all year through the approval of equipment purchases and everything else. Those go a long way, but we have to pay a competitive wage. The wages that I have proposed in the budget puts us at a competitive wage with especially area departments. Those hourly increases for staying after 3 years, those are actually low on departments that are offering. Some other departments are offering even $1 more an hour than I'm coming up with. But I have to come in somewhat in moderation. So with all of those special assignments and everything else, that equals about $20,000 is what I'm asking for the employees, which is about, tax impact is about 3 cents, okay, in actuality. So it's not a lot considering what we have downstairs and what we're trying to build. So the overall salary impact, again, with that approved, pre-approved that you guys gave before, is about $45,000. So it's about half of the increase that I'm looking for the budget for next year.
Does the 45 take into account the retirement impact?
It does. That's all retirement too. Yeah, we figured all that in. Alina from the budget committee was extremely helpful in the spreadsheet again for me, so she worked tirelessly on that. But yes, FICA as well as New Hampshire retirement and holidays. And it's also calculating in the overtime, which I'll get to in a second. But I just want to kind of explain a little bit of that. Does anybody have any questions on just that line of thinking that I just went through?
Are any of them currently the ones that might have, well, you didn't go to anybody with associate's degrees. Is there anybody with associate's degrees? Or
No, not that would qualify. Not that would qualify.
Are they working towards this?
I do have one working towards that, yes. And this
Working
also,
towards a bachelor's or not?
right now, an associate's is what this individual is working towards, but, you know, when you offer things like this, it does promote them to maybe better themselves. In this industry, like any other industry, college degrees do set you a little bit ahead sometimes. You know, for many agencies, just to get to a status of lieutenant, you've got to have a degree. You know, and my whole goal is to grow these individuals, to promote their growth in the profession. And hopefully that grows into something of growth.
Mr. Chairman, is this in line with what your expectations would be for an area department?
Yeah, I've never seen retention bonuses built into pay. I usually see it as like a December payout of, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. But, it's a benefit to the employee to have it in their pay because they can earn it more throughout the year. If they do overtime, whatever, they can either create more if they want or create a status quo, because the $2 is what, 4,500 for the year or something right around
Yeah,
there.
for all that $2, there's 3 employees that will qualify for that retention increase next year. But my goal, future goal, is to also build that increase into their contract. Their 3-year contract is my goal, is to build it into that. Because I have to be realistic. The 5 of you will not always be on the board and receptive to everything. And I may get a board that comes in and says, we're not giving that $2 this year. And then I've got employees downstairs going, wait a minute, they got it last year. So my goal, moving forward after this year, is to try to build it into the contract itself. That way they know, when they sign up, hey, do you know if we have to stay a minimum of 3 years, but we got to bump up to 3 years just to stay in it. This is great. Like I said, there's a department to the south that's even going over about that. But, I needed to start somewhere with these improvements. Rather than just throwing a bunch at hourly pay. You need to earn these types of things. These aren't just, we give it to you because you're a patrol person and you've been here X amount of years. It gives them, and I really think that when you have programs like this, it gives them self-worth to be part of an organization that recognizes their achievements rather than just showing up, sitting in a seat and covering calls.
I'm good with either way, the answer being either yes or no, but have you based this program, the development of this program or concept on something that you've seen in the past or you've seen work in the past, or is this kind of a great idea that you guys are implementing.
Yes and no. Part of it, yes. I've always implemented special assignment increases. And it worked very well in Wakefield. It increased retention exponentially. And I heard, and I talked to my folks a lot about that, and they said, we get self-worth in knowing what we're building. When they get those special assignments, and they're rewarded for them. Evidence, for example, the evidence room is a pain. It's a painstaking process that takes attention to detail like no other. And it's way above what you would normally do as patrol. So yes, I have tested that out. The retention, not so much, because I'm trying to think outside the box. I'm not a firm believer in these sign-on bonuses, and thankfully I haven't had to advocate either way for that because we've been full staffed. But, yes. But that sign-on bonus is just that, it's a sign-on bonus. But now those things are so competitive, that $21,000, how do you compete with that? That wrecks contracts. Before, when it was a $2,000 sign-on bonus, I said, well, okay, well, you had an officer that would get their 2,000 here, then they go to another PD, and then, and you know how that's worked in the past. But, so no, that is something a little different. And education rewards, yes, we did.
I'm not sure I understand.
Education rewards are, I'm not sure I heard of that.
Not sure, it's a good idea, Chief.
Busted by my watch. No, education was used more as an incentive in the past in a promotional part, not so much as part of your salary. But, think about this, that again, we benefit from your education, and these folks have student loans. Now, we didn't sign up to pay their student loans, and this won't pay off their student loans, but it certainly helps when they get a little bit extra per hour to pay off some of those student loans.
Now, what's up, I see the reduction in the retirement, is that a state contribution, or is that,
That's the town contribution, that's set.
so it's going down this
It's
year?
going down next July 1st. So there'll be a certain rate, I think at 30, is it on there?
Yeah, you have two, you have one for admin, one for officers, so it goes down by 2.6%.
And then 0.53% for admin, yes.
And that's just a statewide thing?
Yes, yep.
Are they
Yeah, every
picking up-
town.
Are they picking up more, is that why, or?
It's set by New Hampshire retirement system every 2 years.
Oh, all right,
It's what they need to keep the fund solvent.
all right, so they've changed, so they've reduced it. So
Yeah, we just got kind of lucky on that one.
I was just curious, because I'm like, well, we're increasing, why are we decreasing? It's just-
I think there's a benefit with the salaries in public safety increasing, so now the fund is taking in more money because the percentages are on a higher percentage, so you have the benefit of the fund getting more revenue.
Probably have more people staying a little bit longer to earn more, probably.
The other thing that,
Because they're all getting out, going to retire again?
the other thing to think about with this is, again, I go back to that $92,000 request. Part of that, you folks again graciously approved an 8th position in the middle of the budget cycle. That includes that for next year, which as we talked about, we have a deployment, so while we have to budget for that, we might not realize that actual outlay in salary if that person stays deployed for the full year, which we expect. We don't have any indication that would go away.
And that doesn't change until next fall.
24,
right?
yeah, for my 24 budget. And to offset that, I had spoken to you folks about this before. So what I did is I recalculated overtime. I cut overtime by almost $14,000 to try to offset some of that extra salary. And the thinking is when you have a better full staff and you stay full and everybody's working on all cylinders, you should not need as much overtime. You still will need a healthy overtime budget, but I thought we would start with a $14,000 reduction. And the way it was figured last year, I don't remember if any of you, you folks obviously wouldn't remember about the spreadsheets. It was very convoluted because last year it was budgeted that we had sheriff's help on off hours and things like that. I did a straight calculation based on what I estimated the full hours for the year would be for overtime. So that's why we had a significant reduction.
And with a quick calculation, that reduction in overtime, if you have 3 people up for a retention bonus, completely covers those bonuses. That's what it looks like to me.
For the retention portion,
Right.
yes. Yep. Yeah, the retention portion, I think, was about, was it 90,000?
Probably 10 grand or something, yeah.
Yeah, it was right around $10,000
covers
for the
that.
retention portion,
Okay.
yes.
Well, and you also have an additional 6,000, you reduce it just for uniforms.
Uniforms are down too, yeah, plus retirement's down.
Well, that's the other thing I did, is I reduced uniforms. Last year, there was a lot in it, but that was necessary because, they planned on hiring 4 new employees. Myself being one of them. And it does cost between $5,000 and $6,000 to outfit a brand new employee. And again, we had a very, very complicated formula previously for uniforms. I simplified it this year. And so that's how we were able to reduce that as well. I wanted to reduce it by more, but we need to replace the vests that we wear every 5 years, and there was never really a schedule for that prior. So I've got us on a schedule. I purchased some this year. I've got to purchase some next year, which I included in the synopsis. So that's why it's still actually a little bit high.
Do you have the DOJ vest grant?
No, we will though. I'm going to apply. I did not get to it this year, but I'm going to apply for next year, yes. But yeah.
What
And
do
that
you
doesn't,
usually pay for that?
it doesn't pay for the full amount, it pays for half of the vest, yeah. Oh, what else?
But I don't think it comes out until June, July, so it's,
What do you do with the old vests? Put them in a pot and hope for the best?
Yeah, we'll save them, we'll save some of them, they break down some of them, they're not as bad because the carriers we have nowadays are a little bit more heavy duty. In the old days, the old carriers, you sweat in them and it breaks down the material, but we'll save them, and if people have ride-alongs, you can put a vest on them if we need to. We don't generally recycle them among officers though. I remember in my old department, we gave them to the rec department and they used them for paintball fights. They work because
Selectmen's outing.
yeah.
You ready?
I'm ready for it. Let's go. I'm a good shot.
I'm Gracie, watch out.
Now, and some of these other smaller increases are literally just, New Hampshire retirement went up as would be expected with the salary increase of 45,000. New Hampshire retirement went up as well. So it's a big number, but you would expect it to go up.
And your fuel's up too. So.
Well, fuel is a whole different issue. So fuel is actually, it's calculated very meticulously, and it's based on average use of gallons per month. And we actually use a national website which calculates the estimation for fuel. Last year, it calculated the fuel usage for this year at $2.90 a gallon. It was well before we hit the rock bottom on everything with oil. The calculation used this year is $3.61 a gallon for this budget. So it did go up significantly. The other thing that went up significantly is the cost of maintenance and oil changes. Oil changes went through the roof. And the other thing that I saw when I looked at gallons and miles used per month, if you look at the beginning of the year before I got here, we were averaging only about 700 gallons a month. And then when I got here and I got us up to full staff, our averages per month are up to 900, 950. We even surpassed 1,000 in some months because we're full staffed and we actually are out patrolling and we're doing what we should be doing. So I would have expected to see that, and that's in fact actually what happened. So that's why you have a sizable increase in fuel.
is the increase in oil changes worthwhile looking to see if Public Works could do generic oil changes?
Our guys? It would be great if they
Not the
did.
PD guys, the Public Works.
No, it would be great if we did that. I don't know that they have a mechanic that could do that, because.
They just rebuilt one of those trucks.
Yeah, well, and again, I'm all for that, I would love it if somewhere down the line we had our own maintenance department in town, but that's a big ask.
Right, that's down the road, but if we start with oil changes,
I'm-
maybe at some point.
I
can
am
ask
more
them.
than happy to entertain that, absolutely, and I'll talk to Wayne about that, but yeah, they jumped, because, the mechanics are more expensive now.
Right.
And I went with one mechanic to do, we were using 2, 3, 4 mechanics when I got here. We were picking up cars in Portsmouth, Stratham, and Brentwood. I said, we can't do this. So I did come down, one mechanic, and he's good, and he's competitively priced, but it's expensive. But no, I'm happy to absolutely look into
How
that.
many oil changes we do?
It depends on the cruiser. In the spreadsheets, you can see, some of them, like mine's really only
The
two.
electronic one that got emailed earlier, or it's in the
In the drive.
drive.
But under the general tab in that, you'll see, how many oil changes each cruiser is allotted for. One's up to 12 per year because we put 40,000 miles on it in 1 year. Some others are 3 to 4, so it really depends on the cruiser, out of the 8 of them.
So at least 50 a year, approximately.
Could be, yeah, it could be right around there, yeah. Maybe closer to 40, yeah, but yeah. It's significant, so it's worth looking into Public Works and seeing if that might be.
Because then it's just a matter of ordering a bunch of filters that would fit. Just
Right.
The only downside of that is before I started using this entity for our oil changes, that's all we got. They didn't check everything else. They didn't check tire
Right.
pressures, they didn't rotate tires, you know, and that's why I spent so much on maintenance issue, because there was core maintenance issues that were never dealt with in these cruisers. So we had to, that's why when you look at if you look at that second column on year-to-date spent, we've already spent our maintenance issue, we're still, you know, but that would be something I would talk to Lean about, with that. It was straight oil change, and then we just send them for a maintenance check every so often, that's fine.
Well, I know they changed Kip's tires on his, did stuff for his stuff, so.
Well, we used to change one tire at a time too, so. Can't do that on a Jeep, can you?
No,
So anyway,
especially if you keep increasing them.
that's right,
By
yeah,
the
yeah.
time you get new tires.
So at any rate, those are the major highlights of the budget as I see. Some of the other ones are just inflationary increases of, you know, 1,000 here, 1,200 there that were built into the budget in terms of due subscriptions, things like that.
And Chief, for the K-9 program, I know the initial 20,000 was raised by donations. Does this line here imply that the additional costs are also covered by donations for the next fiscal year?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, Officer Kelly
that
did
was
an
taken out.
amazing job, and I
He
decided.
overperformed in his
He did,
fundraising.
he certainly did,
Okay.
and then some. So rather than add a line, we still have a line for
Right.
K-9, but it's still
It's
zeroed
zeroed
out.
out. Nice.
And I'm gonna leave it that way, with the understanding I may add dollars to it in the '24 budget, but right now I don't see a need to.
Nice, great.
Yeah.
Should that stay at $1, or do we lose it if we?
I think it has to stay $1, so we don't lose the line, right?
Yeah.
You zeroed it out, I'm thinking it has to stay $1.
That's how it was when I got it, so I don't know if we need $1 in there, or.
Because like mutual aid, we have it's $1 too.
You can't spend any money on K-9 supplies if you leave it at 0. So if you think you
I think
may
it
want
should
to
be
spend
fine.
something, then you can put in $1.
Or we can reallocate $1
I
from
would just
somewhere
put it
else.
at $1, just in case. It sounds like you won't need it for next fiscal year, but just in case.
If you wanna put $1 in it, that's great, we can, you know, that'll give it a even $10 between that and the AC.
I'm fine with putting the $1 in there and then making a motion to move the 1,106,672.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second on $1,106,672. Any further discussion?
No, but thank you for putting this together and all of the explanations and details. It's just really helpful as we're coming
pleasure.
into.
Again, thank you to Alina, who was extremely instrumental in making sure you got the right information. I had it all up here, she just helped me translate it to that, so.
Fair enough.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I'll
Motion
make a
carries.
motion.
Thank you, folks, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Would it be possible for me to make one quick addendum to Dick's part of the agenda?
After.
Okay, it's about what happened on election, I think it'd be good for people to hear.
Yeah,
Okay.
public public comment.
Okay, very good.
She does have the library budgets, if you want to do that, then you want to do.
Janice? Come on down.
our handout? We don't, it's not in here.
No, she's gonna bring one to you.
But we saw him last week, right?
Yes.
This chair's kicking around, we can slide and steal and.
Do you know that?
So you think 7 or did you say 6?
Careful with that one.
Okay. Do you have one more for Tamara? Okay, go share.
Thank you.
Copies of that, you can do it after, I'll just read it.
Okay, perfect.
Janice, you want me to start with this?
Yeah, let me just make a general statement. So thank you for having us back again tonight. We went ahead and made the changes that you had asked for at last week's meeting. We also had a special trustees meeting, and there is a statement from the trustees to the board, which our chair is going to read right now, if that's okay.
That work? Great. Thank you, Select Board members. This year, the Mary E. Bartlett Memorial Library conducted a review of base salaries, responsibility, and library usage for multiple town libraries and compared that data to our own staff and programs. The packet you have received contains that analysis. It is the same work which was presented to this board and the Budget Committee, and we actually did it at one of our trustee meetings in the last 2 months. As expected, the analysis showed a need for wage adjustments in next year's budget based on comparative compensation and workload. Also, at the request of the Select Board, you have received 3 versions of our salary line item for our 2023 budget. The versions include 5% COLA increases across the board for all employees, 2% COLA increases for library director and assistant director, and 5% COLA for the remaining employees. 0% COLA increases for library director and assistant director, and 5% COLA for the remaining employees. As the Select Board knows, our library is a valuable asset to our town. The Board of Trustees is committed to supporting and paying our staff fair and competitive wages. We would like the Select Board to support the trustees of the Mary E. Bartlett Library and our recommendation that our staff be granted the same consideration as all town employees and approve the same 5% COLA increase this board has generously recommended in the budgets of all town departments. It is also our understanding that the Select Board voted to cover 100% of these additional payroll costs with the ARPA funds, so there will be no tax impact on our town residents next year. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm going to leave this with Karen so she can copy, and you guys can all have a piece of it if you need it.
Did we include the library into the COLA numbers?
I used the total payroll, so
Okay.
they would have been included in that number,
And
yes.
and just an addendum to that, not to
I wasn't even thinking about that last time when we talked about it.
not to negate what you were saying, but yes, we did offer 5 and up to 2.5, but there was also, the discussion was that there was an adjustment plus the 5 and 2.5, so.
Right, and that adjustment is.
So
talked
it's
about
not that
in
we
the
didn't
first
support the
paragraph.
trustees with what we told we would do, we were questioning whether we should do an adjustment plus 7.5%. That was the question.
Right.
Thank you.
So much we have left.
This was figured into it, so,
That's right. When we were talking last week, I wasn't thinking about the fact that we had already factored that in based on payroll, which includes library.
well, it didn't include the adjustment. It
Right.
just
Oh, the wage
included-
adjustment, right, exactly. No. And I'm assuming the wage adjustment we would not necessarily cover with ARPA,
Correct.
right? It would just be the
Nor
COLA.
was
But the COLA that
the
we already.
numbers calculated on the wage adjustment,
True.
and then
That's true.
it was
It would be
calculated.
elevated. It was on current payroll, not adjusted. That's a good point.
Correct.
Yeah. So that number will go up from whatever the 80-something thousand we talked about. That makes sense. Okay.
So, we're talking budgets from 327 to 321, so that's a $6,000 difference. I don't think that's on a $300,000 budget is really a significant number, but
I don't either.
you just saw this, so I'll let you digest it and ask questions.
So everything else is the same, the only difference in these is the COLA amounts.
Correct.
Right?
So, yeah, one would be the full, the other one, we asked for the top two
Yep.
people to get either,
Yep. 0 or 2.
Right. And so,
no, 2.5, 5 or 2.5.
This was 2.
oh, I did two.
You
I
did
think it
two.
was- I think it was 2.
Yeah, I thought it was two. And I put the 5% on top along with with the presentation that we had made, which has been updated to include director as well. It was not in there when we previously did the presentation. And then following that is the 2%, and the last version is the 0% for the two of us. And just, I should be remiss to not introduce, this is Kiki, the assistant director.
And thank you for factoring the COLA into the wage adjustments, because that's what was confusing last time, is that it was in a separate
Right,
column. So this is
right.
helpful to kind of see the difference.
Now, one thing you'll notice is when I was doing this, I realized that, and we had talked about this last time, when we did this last year, we factored in our hourly rates without the COLA included in it, because it was a one-time out of the 4 years that I was here. And the same thing for this year. So I went back and I had to readjust the hourly rates from last year and the hourly rates for this year, including the 5.9% COLA last year and the 5% this year. So if you were to take an older copy of this, all of these numbers have changed.
Explain that again?
So the hourly rates, the January to March, reflect the hourly rates from last year.
Oh, didn't have the COLA in it.
It did not
was
have
a
the
base
COLA in
rate.
it, correct.
Gotcha.
So we added it into that, so it's apples to apples.
So the pages, like that you had listed at 950, now we're at 1006
Correct.
because you adjusted it for the COLA. Gotcha.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I gotcha. I think, as we talked about last week, these adjustments are major sticker shock. But they're sticker shock because of how much your department was being underpaid relative to the market. It's not sticker shock because this board is out of control and throwing money at a department. It's because we are adjusting you to market, just like we did for FD, PD, office, highway, everybody the year prior. And you were the only department that wasn't included in that wage adjustment, so you went a year later. So I think I was the one that brought up the COLA in the beginning because I felt that equity and fairness, it was so important, and I was starting to hear that different departments were gonna have to pick and choose different COLA amounts for different employees, and that just seemed so completely inequitable, and that we needed to do it across the board, and this whole board agreed unanimously with that. So I would support that we add this COLA back in, especially now that I remember that we have ARPA funds that we can use to cover this, so this wouldn't touch the taxpayers, and I think it's only fair for you two to be the only employees in the entire town that are exempted from COLA. Doesn't seem super fair, even though maybe it helps the sticker shock the tiniest bit.
And just
That would be
to
my thought.
kind of clarify too, the wage adjustments that we did are based on 2021 data. So the COLA brings us to 2022. If we don't have COLA in there, then we're already a year behind. So we're starting in that backwards trend again. The other thing I'd like to just make a sort of a public statement that this reflects an amount of 5.02% up to 30% increases on individual staff members. There is no 40 or 50% increase. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Can someone educate me about what happened between the 2019 and 2020 budgets, particularly in the compensation area? I mean, there's a $28,000 drop between
So
the expense there?
Yeah, we lost an employee. We shifted other people into positions and never filled the bottom level position. And when we shifted people, we did it at the current rate, not the increased rate that the person in the previous position was getting. That's as clear as mud, I'm sorry.
People making more money left if we hire
Basically,
cheaper
yeah.
people.
Got it, that's.
Basically, yes.
Translation?
I'm gonna blame it on COVID brain, because that is a thing.
No, that's fine. I
but
guess
yeah,
where I'm going with that is the 2018 compensation amount was $186,000. And then the 2022 compensation amount is $181,485. And so the 2023 line would be, sorry,
205.
205,652, if you did the COLA.
205,652.
And Janice,
No,
not to be contrarian, but this is a 46% pay bump for your assistant director. If you just do the new wage minus, subtract, divide, so it's a significant increase.
I was rushing through some of
No,
these
it's fine, I mean, it's
calculations at
just,
the end of
we
the
should
night,
be
so-
realistic with the town. It is
You're
a
right,
huge
you're right.
increase that is
It
going
is.
to cause people's eyeballs
Right.
to pop out until they look at the market data and the fact that what you can
Right.
get paid one town over is astronomically higher than what we have been paying in this town.
And to kind of go back to what the chief was saying, that particular person has a master's degree. And while it is not required, the two highest positions in the library, the job descriptions are master's degree or equivalent in education and experience. So there is an expectation that we are at that level. And in fact, our assistant director has a master's degree. So to be paying her what we were was kind of embarrassing.
And I'm just gonna point out that even if I look at the police department, for a bachelor's degree, they're getting paid $25.65 an hour.
Which would
What you're
compare to
asking
like a
for
library
compared to this
assistant.
is $32.42 an hour is what you're looking for.
No, that's the
But you're
master's level.
comparing you're comparing a police officer to a department
You
head.
would need to compare the library assistant who's getting paid $17.22, or the
Doing.
full-time employee to a patrolman who's getting paid $20, so they're getting paid less than our patrol officers.
And actually, in fact, we're both department heads, so it would be more of a comparison with the chief,
You'd have to compare them to Chief Ventura.
not with an
And
officer.
Dodie.
Our library assistants,
Stretch.
well, I mean, ultimately, we are responsible for the building, all the people in it, all of the staff. We are department heads, and if you look at the job description, it is listed as, the library director is the CEO of the library. That is how it is listed, and that's statewide.
And I mean, you can quibble about it, but it's market-based, which is how we did every other department. So unless you think the market data is wrong.
And I understand that some people don't value the library or the work that we do as other people do. But, again, it is market-driven, it is all data-driven, and our job descriptions match up with what we're doing.
And just so everyone is aware, the towns you compared it to are Sandown, Greenland, Danville, Fremont, Brentwood, Deerfield, and Rye.
Were those the same towns that you did, that the budget committee came up with 3 years ago?
Mostly we didn't include Rye. But we did include Raymond in ours.
And in our prior meeting, we had, basically already agreed on the adjustments. It was the COLA that we asked them to take back. So that should be what we're deciding tonight.
The other thing is, I prefer not to compare a department to a department. They're vastly different things, and I think it's more equitable to look at comparable positions with the same job description. That's just my opinion.
I'm in support of the wage adjustment, and to Andy's point of it only being a few $1,000s and covered by ARPA, I would like to make a motion to support the budget that does an across-the-board 5% COLA so that these employees match all other employees in town.
So just to clarify, it's not fully covered by,
The COLA adjustment part is covered.
no. The calculation was done on the old numbers, not on the new numbers.
Sure. What would you suggest?
You have to increase
I mean,
ARPA.
If you're doing a wage adjustment, I would think it would have to be on the,
Well, no, I agree, but I'm just saying the money we allocated
yeah, I understand that.
isn't
Enough.
It's based off
enough.
Yeah.
current payroll.
So you
dollars.
Do you have a
Or ARPA.
ballpark, Karen, of how much different it would be? And if you can't do it right now, that's fine. But if these are going up, I mean, it's not gonna be a lot for these bottom employees, but it'll be a bigger, slightly bigger chunk up there.
Well, we know it would be at least 6,000 because that's the
Yep.
difference in between the two budgets.
Yep.
But then you have that percentage for the two
Right.
higher positions.
Actually, that's,
I would say you're probably gonna come in around at least 10.
yeah, because it's adjusted upwards. Might be hard to crunch that math, though.
That's
Yeah, I
what-
don't think you're gonna do it
Yeah.
at the table.
No,
Yeah.
I think, I'm willing to bet it's probably gonna be at least 10.
I think the money allocated is the money allocated. We shouldn't allocate any more money because now
We
we're
need
gonna,
that for the next year.
We didn't specifically allocate a number at that discussion. Karen just did a back of the envelope estimation.
I thought we did.
We did,
Yes.
she gave us a ballpark of how she thought it would come in the 80s,
Do you
but it
want,
wasn't specific.
so if you approve every budget as proposed this evening, this is where we will come in. So if you take your 2022 operating budget of $4,926,449, you add in the full-time firefighter warrant article of $115,210, compared to everything that we're presenting in your 2023 operating budget, less $100,000 of ARPA funds for full-time fire, $86,000 towards the COLA, and $35,000 towards your insurance, you'd be looking at a 4.1% increase in your total operating budget.
and what would that leave us for ARPA funds?
That leaves about $149,000 once you've taken out these funds plus what you've already spent on the highway addition. So you'd still have enough to step in the rest of those full-time firefighters in '24.
Is this factored in? Like, are those numbers factoring?
This was proposed off of the 2023 budget, yes, with the full COLA across the board.
But these numbers,
Including this COLA?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I estimate, because I didn't have these other, adjusted figures when
Okay.
I put them into BMSI this
And
morning.
interestingly, when I was at the NHMA conference, I was sitting with one of the select board members from Kingston, and he was like, hey, how's your budget coming in this year? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't heard the bottom line yet, we're working on it. We're gonna use some ARPA, and they were like, ooh, ARPA, because their budget's coming in at 10% increase. And they actually they were like, we didn't even think of using ARPA to cover wage increases, so they were potentially gonna do that. So to hear that it might come in at 4, and he was saying he was hearing from other towns that they're coming in around 10.
And if you use, and without any ARPA funds, it's 8.54%. So still within your inflationary rates of what you're seeing today.
Yep.
I mean, I'm struggling with this particular increase, and it's not that I don't buy it, this is a tough one, it really is, just,
It is.
but here's where, if I'm going back to 2018, which I think is reasonable, starts at 186, and you just add 3.5%, I mean, you're well over, the 20, what did we say, 205?
205,
You're well over, you're way over 205, adding in the inflation starting at 3.5%.
Meaning if they had had raises yearly.
If they had stayed at 186 on a trajectory, adding just 3.5% to that every year going forward.
Meaning instead of us having to do a big wage adjustment now, it had been spread over the years?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
the
If we
budget
had-
continued to grow as every other department grew,
Right, instead of being
going
flat or
backwards.
down.
Instead of going literally backwards by $30,000, which is the justification that I'm understanding in terms of why we are where we are.
And was there a reason that the library was not included in the market adjustment last year?
I just-
Because they have a separate trustees board that just wasn't ready or didn't wanna do it that year? Okay.
The elected body of the trustees is the one that puts forth their
Yep.
budget, and then
Yeah, just didn't do it last year. Gotcha. So John, what you're saying is you are in support of this jump even though it's fairly big, because if there had been appropriate inflationary increases, it would probably be even higher? Is that what I'm hearing you say? No, I'm trying to interpret what you're saying.
Yeah, me too.
You're trying to interpret it as well. Okay, I'll let you do that then, not me.
To me personally, I liked our thought last week when we were like, I think giving it to the 5% lower is just such a huge, when you're looking at 40%, and I tack in that, to me it's too.
Yeah, and I actually
Too
felt that
much.
way, I felt that way too last week, but then I started thinking about how I was the one that brought COLA because I wanted total equity and fairness among all employees. And I realized that what I suggested really violated that and probably just wasn't fair for $6,000 difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think squabbling over $6,000 is kind of silly, but when we're talking about a
$4 million budget.
But looking at the inflation starting in 2000, like, that's what did it. That
I
is
know
the
when you
reason we
lose-
are here, is because we lost someone who we were paying a pretty good wage. We hired someone at a far less expensive wage, and that had ripple effects in terms of the budgetary impacts, going forward. That's why we're here.
Do we have a motion?
My
She made
motion
a
is on the table, yes.
Jen's motion is for a library budget of 327, 591, 60.
329, right?
327.
Oh, 327, 591.
This, yes,
That's the one,
yep.
5% all the way across.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? My eye is gonna be in support of the library trustees because they're the ones that are elected to support that budget, and that's what they're asking for. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you.
Think it's an A, but
Nay.
I'll give you an I.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for taking the time to consider
Is
everything.
this the same
Thank you.
thing, Janice, that we had from before?
You know, it's different.
It's
It
slightly
does add some additional slides for the
Thanks.
director position. Thank you.
Oh, right.
I'm gonna keep this and I'll scan them to you in the morning. Do you have a few minutes?
All right. We'll move to general government. 419915. Ooh.
So the changes.
So the
here.
increases are in the long-range planning line. That has a budget of $7,750.
I can speak to that.
That's for economic development.
So do you want me to speak to that now?
Sure.
Economic development. So over the course of last year, you know that we've been, the Economic Development Committee has been pretty hard at work, and I've been really proud of the group. We've had a couple of consulting arrangements granted to us at no cost. One was with Darren Wyndham, who really helped us kind of get going, identified the experts who should be sitting on the committee who would be helpful in getting this stood up, and then he attended several of the first meetings, and he provided us a zeroed out invoice just to give us an idea of what his actual hourly rate would be if we were to have been charged for that. that came out at $4,382.40, and I think you have the printout of that.
Sent them to the kitchen, I thought you grabbed them.
Oh,
me to
sorry.
cook it.
If you'd like to see the invoice, I have those for you. As well as the UNH MBA students who did the community project for us. They spent 8 weeks doing the project. There were 4 of them. I calculated 40 hours a week for 8 weeks at 320 hours. At the average hourly rate of $30, which is a rough estimate of what we would have anticipated the cost having been if we were to pay a group with similar qualifications, being that they're students. The total comes out to $9,600 for that report that they provided us. So we're looking at $13,980.40 in terms of granted outside assistance to the Economic Development Committee and the town of Brentwood, in addition to having an international PR expert, an attorney, a commercial real estate professional, and a PhD data scientist, a PhD environmental engineer, and a civil engineer, all on the committee, meeting on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis. And as we have moved forward, we're looking at, as we've discussed before, the concept of having Plan New Hampshire come and bring several experts, up to 18 experts, into Brentwood for a weekend to sit down with the entire community. I hope as many people participate as possible or as interested, to give a vision of what the rec, and again, being true to the recreation facility, but what the rec could look like, or what they would love to have in our town, having to do with the rec, being there. So that's going to be in May. We're looking at quarterly business breakfasts for the town. We're going to invite anyone who wants to come, but for the first time, the town of Brentwood has a list of all of the businesses in Brentwood, and so we've put that together, and I want to commend Jillian Benedicts for her incredible support and helping with that, and
the police chief for allowing her to do it.
and the planning department, the planning board for working with us to allow her to do it, and then as well as attempting to do another master plan chapter for economic development, which we still don't have. So that's the total of the
77.5.
thank you, 77.5 that we're asking for. So there's tech, just website and Survey Monkey type stuff. Business breakfast, 37.5 for the chapter, and would love to answer any questions that y'all have.
Have we, now that we have a business list, thought of maybe coming up with a organization that could support the Economic Development Committee, more like a Chamber of Commerce, having a business membership of $50 a year or whatever, and then, eventually, maybe the first year it's not gonna support the economic development, but after a while, it can at least pay for the quarterly breakfasts and stuff like that.
I anticipate, so, yes, 100%. We've actually talked about this idea specifically on the committee. We just don't feel like we're quite there yet, but yes, the vision is to have more of an association, and we're hopeful, cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get the breakfasts donated, and so that money will obviously just go back to the general fund if it's not used, but we're kind of planning. I mean, it's $1,000 for $2,000, $500 quarterly breakfast, but we're hopeful that we don't even need to use that, and we can contribute that back to the taxpayers.
Do you know how many businesses we have?
185. It's not. This has not been fully vetted. I'll admit, but,
So still being reviewed.
this is literally like hot off the presses
It's
as
a draft.
of last week. So, yeah, I mean, at $5, a year, we're covering our breakfasts easily. So I don't think that we're gonna have a problem doing something like that, but I wanna plan as if, especially given the fact that we're not there yet. I also spoke to the Small Business Administration today, and they're planning on coming in to present at our first quarterly business breakfast, which will be held potentially, we're not sure yet, but potentially as late as May.
Yeah, I mean, if you charge $20 business, you get $3,700.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Anyway, didn't mean to dominate the entire discussion on the budget, but that was my request that's the Economic Development Committee's request.
Then there was another one, Karen, that you have for the town events from 500 to 2,000.
Yeah, I increased that now that we're back to full staff, we're out of COVID, so I figure if we do another team building day plus our regular Christmas party, that we'll have some funds to be able to start doing some more events like that. The other item that is increased is postage. I increased it by $2,000 based off
Which
of
is-
where we're trending.
Yeah, because I mean,
Actuals.
we only had 6,000 in the budget, and you've already spent 7,136.
Yes,
Postage is up, I think, isn't it?
yes. It started at 50 cents and now we're at 57, so for the year. And we're doing
Even
more
meter?
certifieds. Yeah, even meters is still going up.
And we have to mail out all the tax bills and all that other stuff, the dog stuff.
Yeah, so I did a per parcel count. I asked Daphne for the number of tax bills she sends out, the number of auto registrations she sends out, dog licenses, civil forfeitures, all of those kinds of things. And took an average to try to get to that number.
And presumably, Karen, some of these line items had been downshifted year prior, and are going back up,
Yes,
so they're sort of,
and we also take in about $12,000
Corrections.
in revenue every year from the planning board in postage fees, so that will offset that. So that's her reimbursement from legal notices and certifieds.
Not for anything, but are we still doing microfilm? It's still
I know,
that's
it's
what I
still
just saw
budgeted.
that.
Funny you bring that up, Bob.
Would you like me to make that
$420
$1?
for microfilm?
do
Can we make that a buck?
We could make that $1.
there you go, we just saved $400.
I just saved you $399.
I was looking at that like,
I know, it's like micro, do we even do that?
I was like,
Does that even exist anymore?
yeah.
I think there's still stuff on there that has to be accessed if necessary.
Oh, okay, so we need to be able to read it.
I was
Right.
thinking like floppy disks, what else are you gonna?
Pretty
throw
sure
in
that can be
budget?
digitized at this
So
point.
that can go to $1.
That's gonna be a lot more than $1 to digitize it all.
Get it done, guys.
And the new bottom
Be
line
done
would be,
Well, maybe we can save with the internet if we get somebody to look at that.
the new bottom line would be $57,552 when you take out that $419.
I'll make a motion for that.
Do I have a second?
Second that?
Moved and seconded,
5,000.
57,552.
Wishful thinking.
I really cut it.
John and I are gonna be getting
Wishful
into a jig.
thinking.
57552. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
I was getting more excited when you said 5,000.
Should you told us to flip to the next page, all the information that you just rambled about was there.
I didn't know it was there.
General government buildings.
So I am going to request that you table this until next week. So we put the custodial services out to bid. I did receive the bid back. It came in $13,450 higher than what we are currently budgeted for. So I would like to parse that a little bit further and
Same company that we use now or
same
different company?
That's the only bid that I did receive.
Ouch, okay.
Table.
Second.
Probably hire someone part-time for us on that.
Yeah, because then you're at 34. Moved and seconded to table it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
The rest of it's basically flat.
Health officer, $1.
Motion.
Second.
What are we gonna do with Bob's not around next
He
year?
said he would.
And I do have to give you a health officer update on the property today.
We do that in non-public.
One other interesting discussion,
Yeah.
if we ever don't have Bob and we have to have a employed paid health officer, I had an interesting discussion with the same Kingston, select board member, that they pay their health officer per job, not a static rate, and seemed to felt that that worked really well for their town, so just throwing that out there for future, just for future planning if we ever need to, salary.
Because I got a call on Friday
One
saying,
penny.
I need you there right now.
$1, going twice.
And I'm never taking my dollar.
Do I have a motion for $1?
Yeah, I already did.
Yeah, it was motion and seconded
Motion
already.
All in
Go
favor?
ahead, Ian.
Aye.
Pass.
I'll abstain.
Yeah.
It's
Aye.
not going to me anyway, but.
401, motion carries. Street lighting, also $1.
Motion.
Second.
Why didn't you leave
Whatever
this in
happened
here?
to,
We had a street light and then it got taken out. It was over on South River.
So we have 0 because all of them are owned by the state.
well, what happened was, let's back up a little further. The state decided to shut off all their streetlights and told the town if there was any streetlights we wanted, we had to maintain them.
Okay.
We kept the streetlights lit by Oscar Arkell's Memorial at the intersection of 107 and South Road.
Yep.
What happened, did it get? Oh, and it's not being billed to us.
Being charitably donated.
Yes.
But I carry the line item just in case.
Just in case. Okay, thank you.
So that's,
And if we
So
ever
it's just
add
that
any,
single street light
but
that
if
we
we
are
ever
paying.
add any streetlights, like,
Yeah, we need that line
I
item.
need to have, otherwise we lose that.
Yeah. Okay,
And
sounds
we can
good.
never add it back in.
Just wanted to make sure I understood.
um,
I will make a motion for
Motion.
$1. Oh, John did it first.
Second.
I'll second it. Right.
all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. You can figure out who motioned second and go for it.
Arm wrestle will be held
Morgan
after
and
in
Jen.
non-public.
This is, kind of, there's not much you can do about it.
Insurance,
Time it.
Says the insurance guy.
Insurance.
It's
is
not
going
actually
no
up,
matter
it's
what.
not terrible.
I'm
Well,
actually
this is-
surprised.
this is
Just
property
minor.
and liability, workman's comp.
I'm really surprised.
Motion for $139,131.
I'll second it.
Motion is second at 139,131, which is $6,000, less than that.
Yeah,
And I'll just let you know, industry-wise, it's looking like about 8.3% overall.
so that's not bad.
So this is actually really good.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And there's a letter from Primex, and then the next page if you wanna get through it later.
A lot of letters from Primex.
Primex loves us.
As long as they start giving us money. This one is,
So the insurance budget is based off of 2023 rates, changes in plan elections by certain employees, and it also looks larger because the 2 full-time firefighters that were carried in a warrant article in '22 are being moved to this budget for '23. So those 2 full-time benefits are being put here,
Because the warrant included benefits.
yes.
Yes.
And a section of this is what we voted to cover with ARPA? Or that's just health?
Yes, a portion of it you did.
A portion of it.
35,000.
This is health.
Right, so a portion of this, that was the just straight contractual increase, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which was what,
35,000 is what you
35,000 of this
voted.
increase is covered by ARPA, okay.
so it brings us down to 401 technically.
Yes.
Right, so it's an increase of about $70,000,
But we
which is
still have to
significant.
Which
Appropriate.
appropriate and then
50 of that was your full-time benefits that was in the warrant article.
Right. So 50 of the 70 increase was just from the 2 firefighters,
Yeah.
and then there's some benefit changes that account for the rest.
Correct.
Okay,
There's nothing we can really do about
No.
this. I'm gonna make a motion for the 436,654.
Second.
moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
is that it?
I have one other question. Generally, the co-op uses their impact fee dollars to reduce their tax rate. This year, they did not do that. So there is $57,422.12 in the impact fee accounts between the co-op and the Exeter High School. So SAU 16 is requesting whether or not you would prefer a revised assessment to account for that $57,000 to account for that dollar difference now, or whether you would like to wait and let that money sit in the impact fee account to be used next year to offset revenues when we anticipate adequacy funds being decreased by the state.
I say let it sit because the adequacy funds are going down by a
Quite a
lot.
bit, quite a bit.
So, just to be clear, when the legislature decides to reduce the adequacy funds at the state level, property taxpayers at the local level have to pick up the tab.
Yes.
Right. Right, so this would help buffer that.
And somehow somebody at the state figures what it's gonna cost to educate a student 2 years from now.
Which is $3,800.
Even though it has been deemed unconstitutional twice.
Yes,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm just
Actively,
like financial wizardry of somebody at the state that can figure out what it's gonna cost to educate somebody 2 years from now.
yeah.
I don't know what it's gonna cost to eat my house 2 years from
Well,
now.
and to clarify, is the adequacy going down because they redid their formula or because the number of students has decreased or both? That
I
I
don't
don't really
know how
understand.
this legislature figured out their formula.
It
If
may
I-
be both.
If I remember my budget committee meeting right, the rate went up 3%, but the number of students went down.
So they cancel each other out,
Right.
basically, and we
Well,
go down.
Yes and no, but we're talking inflation at 8% and,
Well, they're still determining the adequate education of a student being
right,
$4,000.
and the.
Really?
the-
$3,800
Yeah.
is what it said.
The,
Per student.
This is why it's been
Yeah, which you
deemed
can educate
unconstitutional 2 times.
no one on that ever.
the history I kinda got out of this was it's been generally 3% for the last,
What is it, 3,000, how many dollars?
It's like
3,800.
actually, I think I wrote it down from the school board meeting. It was quoted, 378666, $3,786, compared to, I don't know what Swayze's is, 16,000, yeah.
What do we got,
It's 15 to 18,000.
290 students?
I don't know, it's a lot of money. It's 2.3 billion across the
It's
state.
not just Swayze though,
Yeah, but
it's all of us.
for example, if they just did off of that, Swayze would have $1 million budget.
Yep,
and
Divided by 16 employees, I don't know how many employees they have.
plus the building, plus everything, special ed.
at
Yeah.
some point Letty is gonna give a, education session to somebody. But I don't know, we haven't decided if we're
How
gonna
was that,
do,
Letty?
Really excited.
we haven't decided if it was gonna be just the budget committee or everybody, but she's under the opinion that it is fair market value of what each town pays to the SAU per pupils. It's not that Brentwood pays a higher proportion than somebody else as.
Right, oh, we're talking about the co-op,
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
a
that's
separate
a separate
issue. Okay.
Well, no, because you said all students, so.
I'm just saying the state paid, like Brentwood's responsible for all the Brentwood students. But the state only gives us that
Right.
3786.50
Right.
or whatever per student. We still have to cover it, whether
Right.
they're at their co-op, they're at the high
Yeah.
school.
Right.
And school districts do have different costs,
Charter schools,
but
yeah.
the co-op costs the same for everyone. I think was the point that came up last night at the school board, that there was some confusion about that.
I just wish that the state was pulling its own weight,
Well,
because
they
that's
reduced that years
impacting,
That would be the
Property
biggest driver of our property.
Retirement they reduced years ago.
Yes.
they also
So-
have reduced.
So to get back to the topic at hand, do we have an understanding of why the co-op did not use impact fees the way they usually do?
I think it was just a timing thing.
Was
with
it
this-
impact fees or was it?
It was impact fees.
Which usually they're allowed to use to offset.
That's generally what they do annually, and I think it was a timing thing because they
Timing.
had all of the reports and DRA was ready to go, and because they were so far behind, we were just
Okay,
going.
Now, if they don't,
okay. So we could
are
either.
they allowed to, like, so next year they could say, we're gonna take all this and dump it into impact fees?
Yes,
They could give
right,
all
so
the
the balance
impact
would
fees
just
to
continue to
balance.
grow over this next year.
And what are our two options? Save it and use it to offset the decrease in adequacy next year, or,
Or they will, or we will send them a check for all of those funds, and they will reallocate our monthly assessment payments. But that 60,000 over your 12 payments is going to be,
Yeah, yeah, we might as well just hold it to try
I
to
think you
buffer
should just hold it until
the
next year.
decrease. I support Andy's idea on that,
Yeah, I'm not gonna send them $5,000 every quarter, let's just save that till next year.
yeah. Okay.
So I'll make the motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
That's all I have.
Interest rates are going up, maybe we'll earn some money on that.
Right? There you go.
15 cents.
Thanks. Can you throw it to a health officer?
Russ, do you have anything you'd like to?
You need to be at the budget committee next Monday.
Third Monday, so
Third, I thought it was second.
Nope.
I just forget.
Oh, you get to be at the school presentation.
Awesome.
when Letty says something about something.
As an individual or as part of the board?
Speaking as a private citizen.
John?
No.
Since it's a business, can I talk about it in public or do I have to go to non-public?
You can, but you just give the property address.
313 Route 125 has a septic issue. It's overflowing out of the drain and leaching into the land. So I'm working with KIP and the state and probably planning because they have paved that parking lot and we don't really know where the leach field is because we got 3 different plants. But clearly it's failing as they're using the system. There's nothing going into the building so far from my inspection that I did on Friday. But there is sewage that's leaching.
So we'll draft a letter of deficiency to send to the property owner.
And I'm working with the state because they have to get DEP out, essentially to do some analysis of what's going on with the soil around it.
Are we,
For contamination.
are we revoking any,
I can't, as the health officer, I can't shut down the business or anything because there's nothing going inside the buildings.
understood,
So
okay.
it's not unsafe inside the
So it's
building.
not unsafe for human consumption or, so that and the well's far enough away. Problem is they have to get a pump schedule, we have to get receipts for it, the state's requiring some other stuff, the state is responsible for septic systems. I know enough about septics that I was like, yeah, it's failing. They just had it pumped a couple months ago and it's literally bubbling crude, so.
And because it's on 125 is why the state is involved?
Yeah, well, no, it's.
Or just they would be
because
anyways?
They handle
DES.
anything,
Oh,
DES handles
DES.
anything.
Gotcha, gotcha.
And
For
then,
contamination
and then I
purposes.
have to deal with licensing because of restaurants, stuff like that, so.
Gotcha.
So I can't, they're the ones that would vote for shutting down a license that you can't operate because of consumption.
Yep.
So that's the deal on that. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that so we can send them a letter. Do we need a motion for that or not?
Yes.
Motion to send them a letter.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Jen?
School board meeting last night, we talked about a bunch of things, including some of the adequacy updates. Poor Molly from the SAU had to deliver that news about adequacy going down for next year. The budget, it sounds like next week they're going to the BudCom. They've been working on their budget. Just kind of as previews, there's a new para contract that will give paras health insurance for the first time, which is a good step forward for that group of dedicated staff at Swayze. And there is a request for a new reading specialist, so you'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. Those were the big things. There's also continuation of that group looking into solar. It does look like they'll be able to put solar on the roof of Swayze and not have to use a ground mounted, which was concerned that they would eat up one of their sports fields. So there will be some future over the next years discussion about how to put solar on there and how to do it financially, whether to do a PPA like we did in here, or whether to do an outright buy the system, because now you can get, as a municipality, you can get the discount that used to go only to private businesses. So we would get a direct check back from the feds if we bought the system, but there would be an upfront cost. So those discussions are just kind of percolating through the school. Those are the school updates. Energy and efficiency update, there is a meeting tomorrow Henry from CPCNH will be there. I know there's some interested people that will be there, and anybody is invited to come. Just wanted to remind people that that is not intended to be a public hearing. So the chair will be deciding sort of whether there's a public question and answer or not, because the intention was for it to be a board educational session. But obviously, anybody is invited to that. There
Is that
will
here,
be.
or-
It's gonna be here. I'm assuming they'll, if this room is free, they'll probably move it into here if there's an audience, because usually we meet over there. And then there will be at least 2 public hearings on community power aggregation in the next month or so, a month or 2. So for anybody who can't come to that, there will be multiple other opportunities to learn about community power. And that was my only update from them.
No budget committee Monday, budget committee's meeting Friday at 5, and then Monday at 6. So we'll have back-to-back meetings, before our next meeting.
What are those dates, Andy?
Friday would be the
The 9th.
9th
And 12.
and 12th, 9th and 12th, 9th at 5, 12th at 6.
I did meet with Rick last week and discussed the solar. So I let him know that the solar contract, or we're eligible to purchase and get out of the PPA agreement with revision as of September of '23. So we have to notify them within 180 days of that time, but no later than 90 days prior of our intent to do that. So the Energy Committee, I think after they're done this next push to get ready for town meeting, they were gonna focus on whether they're to do a cost analysis to make sure that makes sense, or whether it makes sense to expand the system at all, going forward.
Didn't we already decide that at this board?
We did, you guys did talk about it loosely, and then we talked about it again last week with the new highway addition, and, I think John asked some questions whether or not it would make sense to grow it, so I think they were just gonna sort of crunch some numbers just to make sure that it did make sense.
I think the issue was we couldn't grow that site because anything bigger there would create a commercial.
Because it was capped out at the
At the
one
one.
There's
Yeah.
megawatt
size
or whatever.
restrictions.
But I don't think it prevents us from doing another site. I don't know legally how that would work, but I know that site, we couldn't add any more panels because,
So I think the inverter can't be.
We had that,
increased.
and we were looking for potential spots for the police department exploration thing. There's that property that we couldn't use that's off of, it's the old Camara property, it's off Meadow Road somewhere.
Right, because that can only be used for recreation purposes,
I
that's how it was
wondering if
granted to
that
the
could be
town.
used for solar.
no.
Probably not if it's recreational. My understanding is when we met with revision, that there was a significant cost benefit to the town. So to me, that seems obvious, but if there's other discussions about like adding on or changing the lease, that might be different. Okay,
Camara
gotcha.
property is off of Stony, it's off of the old, it comes up behind the.
All right. We'll move on to public comment.
Can we just do like a 2-minute pause?
Yeah,
recess?
Restroom.
Yeah.
Restroom.
We're gonna take a couple-minute break.
Do we have non-public then?
Yes, I'm gonna go to the bathroom too.
Yeah, we do. I know. I know.
You wanna just shut the speakers off for now?
like, I can do that all day long, that's what I do now. Right from the potatoes and and I paid them $600.
Bring this meeting back to order.
Yeah.
Oh, it was blinking. Thought it was done.
All right, kind of same thing as the, last time. We'll start the
Do you want
front,
to let
and
Eric
then
go?
when I get around to Eric, I'll give you a call, okay? Or
Did you want a timer or no?
Okay, I just had a real brief one that I wanted to add on to the comments that Dick made, so
Yeah,
if you want to do that ahead, or you want to do it just in order?
if you don't mind, just in order. If you want us to talk first, and it's up to you.
Let me just say quickly, I didn't think to say it when Dick was presenting, but,
Just for the record.
oh, sorry, Eric Tur, 33 Peabody Drive.
Thank you.
Just so you all know, and so the town knows, you know, the reporting that came out of the recount noted that our tally was off by 1. So the reporting that was publicly done said that we had dropped a vote. They gave me the tally sheets, and when I went back and looked, they had mistabulated one of the table counts. And so the other thing that happened the same day of the events that Dick was talking about, which was you know, very much focused on the 27 ballots, was I had asked the Secretary of State's office that they would recheck their tallies, and they did, and they corrected the results to basically match back exactly to what our town reported the night of the election. So I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, that our election came out exactly the way our town did, with the obvious exception of the 27 ballots. And, you know, and it's too bad Dick and Daphne aren't here, but thanks to them and thanks to everyone else who worked the elections for making that happen as usual. But I just didn't want the public result to sort of show that there had been even a 1 vote discrepancy with what the election was reported. Thanks.
Anything in the right side, front row, public comment?
This is probably starting to fun.
Lois, I'm not reading your letter into record. If you'd like to make that as public comment, that is fine. Just that item is not on the agenda, so it's,
Okay,
so if you'd like to read it.
I would, absolutely, thank you so much. Lois DeYoung, Foley Baldwin. Brentwood Board of Selectmen. At last year's town meeting, the Brentwood voters overwhelmingly voted to continue funding the Brentwood newsletter. Yet, the Brentwood Select Board has repeatedly refused to do so. Free speech and freedom of the press are fundamental to our democracy, and what is currently happening at Twitter is finally exposing the control the liberal left has had over the national media. Sound familiar? Several of your select board and others in town are trying to control the Brentwood media by refusing to fund the Brentwood newsletter, unless the Brentwood newsletter signs a memorandum of understanding, better known as a contract, not allowing the Brentwood newsletter to publish opinion articles. Please fund the Brentwood newsletter with no content control. Thank you.
And yes, about 3 minutes.
You want 3 minutes?
Mr. Freya.
Bill Freya, South Road. I've done this before, but I'm gonna do it again. I wanna caution the board. I wanna send a caution up to the budget committee, anybody that's here. What you're doing with the ARPA funds, first of all, ARPA funds are not free money. It's not free. The federal government has zero money. It comes out of your pocket. It's taxpayer money. So it comes out of my right pocket, comes out of my left pocket, doesn't matter. And if you do what you're doing now, next year, there's gonna be no ARPA funds, but we're still gonna have to pay what you voted for now. So I caution you to be careful about how you're spending this money. Because it's tax money no matter how you wanna cut it. And next year, we won't have it, so it'll come out of our property tax. Be careful.
Mrs. Freya.
Liz Freya, South Road.
I wanted to check on a couple things. One is there no longer a pay matrix at the police department? The matrix is gone because now we're doing the 5%, the 2.5%, and the 3%. Is there a pay matrix in addition that goes up every year to the salary increases at the police department? Does the pay matrix exist anymore?
We still have a pay
For
matrix.
starting salaries, right?
We have a pay matrix, but because of the cost of inflation, I think that's why we put in the adjustments.
So what is the range of salary increases, the percentage range, that it's going up between the matrices, the matrix and the 5% and the 2%?
The
7% plus the matrix, right? What's
No,
the
just
range?
7%.
Just 7%. Okay, and the matrix isn't gonna be affected at all? Don't you get a step up every time?
Only the things he mentioned
Chief
tonight.
can answer that.
The matrix of 5% was added to the matrix across the board. And the steps on the matrix were adjusted to reflect a 2% step between steps, was how it was done.
Okay, so it's,
But with these raises, some of which, especially with some of the special assignments and things they put in, they don't actually fall within the confines of each exact matrix position. So some of these are outside of the matrix and between steps, if you will.
so what's the percentage that the raises are going up?
It varies a lot.
7% to 46%, or 7% to 25%, or 7% to
I think it's 7% to 24%.
7% to 24%?
Yes.
Okay. Then I have a question.
I think, I don't have it in front of me.
So the matrix still exists. I think that would have been nice to know before we vote on a raise, when we don't even know what raises include, right?
Well, we knew what the raises included, but what's on a piece of paper really doesn't matter.
Okay.
But
John didn't even know you
you're
had
at 3
a raise.
minutes, so
Okay, so,
you have 3 minutes.
okay, so another question.
45 seconds.
Do either of the library directors have a library degree? Master's, undergraduate?
I believe they both have masters, but are they still here?
Yes.
Yep,
My understanding-
I do not have a master's, I have a bachelor's with 9 years of
right, but what's the
experience.
what's the bachelor's in?
Education.
Okay, and Kiki,
And
you have a
Kiki has-
master's, but what's the master's in?
My master's is in child development and early childhood education.
So they're both related fields with related experience.
Okay. And then my final question was, did you, I know you're doing the economic development committee, which is supposed to cost us nothing, and now it keeps going up every meeting. This is the last, this is ending. And I know you're concentrating on the charrette and the rack, but it's my understanding that almost everybody I knew moved to Brentwood for the school system, not the recreation department.
That's right.
Right side, second row. Any questions?
Oh, sorry. Are you doing, I didn't know how you.
You were
Okay.
first row, right?
You were first row, right, so you had the option for first, so did you have a question?
I did one. You're doing your right, not our right.
I guess that's true.
Stand right, my house right.
Kristen Aldred, 100 Lake Road, and I just wanted to make a couple comments about the newsletter. I agree that we need freedom of press. I don't understand why our town is funding a newspaper. I understand, I heard a lot of the arguments last year. We want to preserve history. We want to, allow people to communicate with one another. I think those are both fantastic things to do. But if it's a newspaper, I think that's a different thing. And entering into an agreement where you do have some sort of editorial control, I don't see how that is going to work. And I think I'd written a comment last year saying, if those are the goals, then maybe we should spend the money on something else, some other means of communication, not necessarily continuing that with the newsletter. And it's not just the opinion pieces. I opened up, I was actually looking forward to reading it. I've been putting articles in there about the planning board. And the first article is basically like about how new people are, terrible, basically. It's not very welcoming. And I don't think it's a good representation of the
Anybody else on my right, first row?
Second, right?
My right, second row. Any questions, comments?
Evening, I'm Stephen Dawson, One Lad Road in Brentwood. I want to speak in support of funding the newsletter without the opinions and editorial sections. I've heard from the other meetings 2 arguments in favor of keeping the newsletter as is. One is that this is a First Amendment free speech issue, and I'd like to make clear that it really is not. The First Amendment says that government cannot suppress free speech, and that's absolutely true. Nowhere does it say the government is responsible for paying for people's free speech, and that's the situation we have here. If we had a different situation where the newsletter was completely private and funded with no government monies, and maybe had some comments in there that was critical of the select board, and the select board tried somehow to suppress that speech, that would be a free speech. That would be a First Amendment issue. So I realize they're similar, but they're also really different. And the point is that nowhere in the Constitution says that this board can use my public tax funds to pay for someone else's private speech. They can, but they are not required to. The second argument is that we need the open editorials and opinions piece because it provides the community a way to express their opinions and come together, and that's the only way we can have better dialogue in the town. And I just think that if you step back, that's what we've had for the last 3 years, and it's clear that it hasn't. It's done the opposite. It's created more division, not less. And so I think if anyone in this room, then we need a different way to communicate in which there is direct communications, where we're actually talking to each other. We have this forum, and the town meeting forum, which is really important and great that it's always formally, you address the select board, I address the select board, we make a point, we make a point. And that's important, but it's not real dialogue. And in the newsletter, the same thing. Where one side lobs a set of opinions, another side may or may not, but that's not really talking to each other. And I don't think anyone can seriously argue that the way the open forum in the newsletter has been published over the last couple of years has brought the town together. Whoever started the fight, I don't care. It's just clear it hasn't worked that way. And I see no reason why it will. I mean, to quote Einstein's famous quote is, you keep on doing the same thing and you expect a different outcome, then you're kind of crazy. And I think that's what we got here. We keep on saying we're going to fund the newsletter with the open editorials, and that's going to bring the town together. It hasn't been 3 years. It's got this apart. For who's ever doing it? I don't know. So let's keep.
I'm gonna have to cut you off.
Okay, let's really keep the good parts. That will help a lot.
Thank you.
We're all set.
Yes, sir.
Jim Hazard on Lock Lane. I'm hoping that there's 6 people here, Stan. I hope there's 6 of you up there, and I respect you, you're intelligent people. I was a city councilor in Methuen. The budget back there was, at the time, was $130 million. I was fortunate enough to serve with Mayor Bill Manzi. He's now the town manager of Seabrook. The guy was the smartest municipal finance person I ever knew. I worked with him on the city council and the city budget. He taught me you never use one-time revenue sources for recurring long-term operating expenses. There's a lot of reasons for that. I thought it was pretty much like common knowledge. Even in businesses, you do the same thing. But I'd love to know, I'd love to hear, because I hear you folks are saying you're going to use one-time revenue sources off of funds to pay for long-term, and there isn't any more long-term recurring expense, more long-term and more recurring than salaries. They're not going to go down, they're not going to go away. again, I'm struggling with why you would want to use opera funds for that. He taught me that you never do it. There could be reasons, and I recollect what he said was, if you're term limited and you know you're done in a year or two, and you want to screw the guy coming in after you, you can do it for that. I don't see that. We don't have term limits in Brentwood. So again, I guess my question is, why would you consider doing that? Especially when we have things in town, like the library, where we have a dangerous situation that needs to be resolved, and that'd be a perfect thing to use, a one-time revenue source to fix a one-time problem like that. So again, I'm just looking for someone, why are you smart people not nervous about using these opera funds for long-term recurring expenses? Because it's really scaring me that 2 years from now, our tax people are going to get hosed really bad. Thank you.
So just a quick response to that. I don't think anybody up here is not scared, but it was a emergency Band-Aid to fix a problem that we need to retain our employees. And that's what we're using that as a Band-Aid. I understand both you gentlemen's position that it's still tax money, and yes, in 2 years, we're gonna have to find the money for that, but this year, it's a Band-Aid.
Jimmy showed 329 to 125. I'm old enough to remember that people used to pay for newspapers, and I'm pretty sure that those newspapers had opinions in them. And I would imagine that those same people still continue to pay for their newspapers, even if they didn't agree with their opinions that were in the newspaper. They're opinions, people. They're opinions. It's amazing that people are getting, to use the phrase again, butthurt. They're opinions. If I read an opinion and I don't agree with it, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna throw a red flag in the middle of 125 and throw a fit. It's an opinion. You let it go if it doesn't agree with you. Or you try to do something about it. But that's what this is about. It's about people getting butthurt, and it's about people, as in my letter that I wrote to the board today, that people are, because they don't agree with something that was written, they're gonna use the power of the board that's clearly overwhelmingly one-sided to abolish, or do what they can to abolish, a long-standing tradition in this town, and I think it's disgusting.
Letty? Sure.
Ready, Bob?
I
Letty
love this
Darn,
part.
speaking as a private citizen, not as a representative of any board that I happen to be on. At the very beginning of the meeting, you talked about a ratio, a percentage number. Can you just really quickly explain what that number is and how it affects, like what that affects?
The assessment number, sorry, talking about?
The 73%?
Yes.
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
What that number reflects is that our current assessments are sitting at about 73% below market value. So you could sell your house for 27% more than what we currently assess you at. And the assessment is what your taxes are based off of,
And that's why we do it every
3 years.
every 5 years.
5 years.
How typical, do we know how it ranges in other communities?
This is the biggest drop that we've seen.
But
Because
there's a
the housing
DRA
market-
allotted value, right? It can only be,
They generally like it to be within 10%, but, I mean, that's where so we'll strive to be at market value in 2025, that's the
This
next
is
time
because
we'll
the
do a full
housing
reval.
market has exploded since
Yes.
we did our last assessments,
Yeah,
basically.
the last time we did our full reval was in 2020.
So you have more equity in your home.
We did it through COVID.
There's still potential for correction in the market.
Yes.
So right now it's here, but it could correct.
Yeah, I can go back down.
back to my right. Janice?
Janice Spears from the library. I just want to remind you that the library has meeting spaces, so if we do want to take on Steve's suggestion that people get together and talk, it's a great public space, it's open to all, there's no cost for it, and you're welcome to set up appointments to meet with people and have these conversations.
Anybody else on that row? Back to the, yes, Mr. Dunham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill Dunham from Block Drive, speaking as a private citizen. I respect Mr. Dawson's opinion, but I'd like to say that the First Amendment, the intent of the First Amendment was to protect speech with which we disagree. I think that's a very important consideration. It's lovely if we're able to agree with everything that is said, but when we are willing to listen to what somebody has to say, which is a disagreement, it gives us an opportunity to respond in kind. I haven't seen that kind of response in the Brentwood newsletter. All I see are the numbers of people who've been responding to actions. And as they say in physics, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Not in the newsletter, because not enough of the people who are sitting, I think, mostly to the left, are even responding to whatever they're reading. They come to a meeting like this and perhaps there are a few grievances, but I'm not seeing it in the newsletter. I wish they would, which then brings me to the second point. Debate. It would be wonderful if we had something like a debate that occurred every month. I'd show up any day of the week, any time of day, if we would only debate. But that doesn't happen anymore either. Look at any high school in the United States of America. How many people debate anymore? And so we're forced to now put it into the newsletter, into the opinion section. You want to set up a debate club here in town? That's great. That's great. I'll be there, and I'm more than willing to support my side of the story. And then we start with the history of the Brentwood newsletter going back to time immemorial. And that's when Linda Rousseau grabbed a bunch of volunteers, they started it, they had opinions, and during that time, there was that back and forth. There were people who were willing to respond. You don't see that anymore, though. You just don't see it. And somebody in the town, many people actually who lived here in the town, recognized that about within the past 4 to 5 years, no, there were things happening in this town that were political in nature, and they didn't like it. And they found that the vehicle to address all of that was through the Brentwood newsletter and the opinion section. I say we need to stick with that. We need to keep that opinion section. Unless you're willing to have scheduled debates on a monthly schedule, which I doubt that anybody will, keep the opinion section and let's keep up the comments. We need to maybe hear more comments from the individuals who are showing up here tonight. Okay, where are my glasses go? Right, thanks.
Rebecca?
Rebecca Dunn on Block Drive. I have 3 things. I just wanted to follow up on Bill Faria and on Jim Hajar about the ARPA funds. How much have we expended or promised already of the total sum that we received? How much is left? Those are my 2 questions about the ARPA funds. Yeah, okay, well, Karen's calculating. So I'm concerned about, yes, the long-term effect on taxes once those ARPA funds go away. I agree with Jim, something that's a capital expenditure, that's a one-time thing, is the better use of ARPA funds rather than something that we will pay for and pay for and pay for, and it will accumulate year after year. Second question, is there any sense from the board what the warrants might be this year? Because each year we have something from highway or fire department or putting into capital reserve funds. Those will be on top of the 4-point-something budget increase that Karen was talking about. So what is that going to increase our overall tax burden? I'd like to know if there's any indication, any conversations about those kinds of warrants happening already.
There has been no conversation of warrants, but I'm sure we have to do road repair.
Yeah. So
But,
those are on top of the 4-point whatever percent that was.
and the only other possible one that's before us now is maybe another full-time police officer.
It's in the plans.
It's in the plans, but no other people have said anything.
I would assume if the amphitheater is the project, that's gonna be a warrant,
I think that's still in the planning phase.
so planning. Anyway, that was my question. Third question, Ms. Aldridge referenced a cover article talking about newcomers, was that the one on this December's issue? That was Linda Rousseau saying tongue-in-cheek, as someone who's lived in town for 45 years, it was a tongue-in-cheek article. It wasn't criticizing newcomers. It was meant to be taken as a fun article. So take it in that light, please.
And I think Karen has your numbers.
Okay, yes, Karen.
We have 472,000 approximately in ARPA funds. We will expend about 102,000 by the end of this year. The board has committed 221,000 to be spent in '23, which will leave 149,000 remaining to be spent in '24. And it needs to,
December 31, 24?
it needs to be
for ARPA?
committed by December 31, '24 and spent by '26.
By 26, okay. Thank you.
Back to the right side.
Betsy Ibbotson, Gravel Road. I just want to thank the board for supporting the library and making sure that the women that work at the library are paid adequately for the job that they do for all of us. My grandson goes to the library. I haven't been involved in a lot of this because I just finally had a young kid living with me again. And he enjoys the library. I think they offer lots of wonderful programs for families. And anybody that hasn't been there should go there. They like to do all kinds of programs. If you have suggestions, I bet they'd be more than happy to listen.
Hannah Hurd, Stevens Drive. I agree with everything Steve Dawson said on the newsletter, get rid of the opinion section.
Back to the left side, or? Yes, ma'am.
Karen Shoemaker from Stevens Drive. I am concerned that during this time in our society, it is unusual, but it is very incendiary, and I do agree that the opinions being expressed are very political in nature, and they are incendiary, and I think we should be vetting exactly where they're coming from. That's my opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
Deb Cinnamon, Big Pocket Road. Some of the stuff that I read in the newsletter, so I just feel like the opinion stuff and the political stuff, it shouldn't be in there. It's not, but just things like calling the Democrat, this is right from the newsletter, the known and unknown radical leftists from the new Democratic Party who pump words into teleprompters. And they make references to the real news. I mean, these are just the types of things that don't really belong in a friendly town. I want to know about what's going on at school and around town at the library and things that we all have in common and share. And the opinion pages are out of control. Frequently, incorrect information is put in there as truth. And it is just, there's no reason for it, really.
Anybody else in that?
That's on my turn, can I still speak?
Yes.
David Bach, 49 Ivy Road. I wrote a letter the last time you had this meeting in the rec center, expressing my concern about the way that the comments and the letters to the editor were being slanted to the right. And I spoke up and said, I think we should keep the newsletter as long as we get some kind of, not control, but some kind of, if it's a Brentwood newsletter, that we need to get it more focused on the town and not on political, social conservative issues. It's very clear, particularly in the last year or so, it's been a right-wing, social value promoted papers, nothing less than that. Incendiary is a great word. It's not contributing to debate or open exchange of ideas. It's simply inflaming people, and particularly with the last article right before the election, lies, just plain out lies. Now, you've got to have some editorial control, and the people in charge of this thing don't do that because they like this right-wing social issue promotion. That's the way it's been. If you want to know, even think about that, go read them all. Okay, so I'm either afraid of getting rid of the newspaper, the newsletter, replacing it with something else. I can't suggest what form that would take, or at least getting some kind of control over it. And I don't call it freedom of speech violation, I call it just common sense to make the town work the way it used to work with civil conversation. So either get rid of it and replace it with something else, or at the very least, if they're gonna stay, I've heard talk about maybe a contract, I think that's a good idea. But frankly, I think if you leave the same people in charge, no matter what you call it, what kind of controls you put in place, it's a very bad idea, because they can't be trusted to do the right thing.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate. I am, for a year, in the editorial board of the newsletter, so I just.
People have the right to their opinion, so they're just expressing that.
I print everything. I don't believe I've left any letter out. There's been a couple that we did follow up on. One was an underage person who went, we made sure the parents gave us permission. All I'm saying is, I want to let you know, I don't leave anything out.
We're gonna get
I'm not a
back
right-wing
and
anything.
forth again.
I just.
All right, if you guys wanna have a conversation,
No,
you
I
can
just,
go.
he, I just, thank you.
Jim, you were quick, I'll give you another minute and a half.
Thank you. Jimmy showed 329 Route 125. I just think it's ironic that people want us to accept their opinions tonight, but that's exactly what it is. You guys all have an opinion.
Trust us.
But you don't want us to.
The board, Jim.
Sorry. But you don't want to, you won't accept and you don't want to listen to our opinions. That's all. And oh, just one last thing. The town did vote last year on the newsletter, and pretty sure it was overwhelming passed. So I just wanted to make sure that we were aware of that.
Jim Manager, I'm speaking on behalf of Tracy. She sent you a letter, you and the town manager, on Friday about the 1/11th, and she couldn't be here tonight. She just did, because they do have the expense of the January letter that has to be paid in December. And she didn't get a response, so I just said I would ask. She wanted me to ask tonight if she could get paid for that.
So we'll be discussing that in non-public next,
Okay.
so I don't have an answer for you.
So she'll get an
I'll
answer
respond.
after that.
Tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Or, I don't wanna speak for Karen, but sometime tomorrow.
Thank you.
Why is that important?
Because it's a contract or legal discussion. Eric, and then we're gonna wind things down.
Yeah, I just want to let folks know, following the election, I had submitted a letter to the town basically regarding the election. Basically stating my appreciation and because of the deadline, there was an addendum to that letter that basically said the 27th ballot issue hasn't been dealt with yet, nor has the nomination of the House. I didn't receive anything back in return for that, but I did get a letter 2 days ago, I believe, saying that the decision was made not to run it because my election hadn't been finalized at that point, which I will say by the Secretary of State, it had been finalized at that point, pending the decision of the ballot commissioner. So I'm not questioning the decision, I'm just saying I would have appreciated if someone had talked to me while the issue was still being debated internally about whether that could or should run.
And I'd just like to add to that at the school board meeting last night, Ron Q told his board that he had stopped writing principal updates because he had submitted multiple to the Brentwood newsletter, and after the multiple not being published in a row, he stopped writing them. So just to put that out there for Ron Q.
I have an answer for that.
You can address it with him if you want, I'm just reporting what he said to his board. Thanks.
You can happily talk to me about that.
Thanks,
yes.
that'd be great.
And that's where
All right, with that being said, I'm gonna take a vote to go into non-public for. Motion. Second. What things do you have, Karen?
Legal
Karen, legal and anything else?
Legal, just legal?
Non-public legal. Motion? Second? All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Bob and Jen, let's just say. I said Bob and Jen.
That's what I wrote.
8:35.